I am Marvin Carolina Jr., your host of Let Me Tell You a Story, and welcome back to another episode. My co hosts are with me, Stephanie Joyner and Pete Athens. Welcome back. How are both of you?
Wonderful,
Doing
Marvin. Still here bringing the joy.
love it, Stephanie, and I'm doing great. Where else would you rather be? This is fantastic.
Absolutely. Just to remind our audience again, we're telling your stories. That's what this whole podcast is about. We're using our platform to tell your stories. We've asked several people to write in and tell us a story and the lessons that they've learned. It is the whole podcast is based on a book that I wrote. Let me tell you a story and the lessons that I've learned. And so we've launched the podcast. So we are back again. We have several stories that we're going to share with you today. And we're going to start with Pete. Tell us a story.
Thanks, Marvin, and shout out to Megan S for having the courage to submit her story.
Yes.
Her story is titled "The Moment She Realized Good Enough" in quotes wasn't actually good. And this is really, heartwarming story. So let me dig right in and read it to you. There is a version of early motherhood that people tend to talk about. It is soft, filtered, full of advice that makes everything sound manageable if you just follow the right steps. What does not get talked about as much are the small, repetitive moments that quietly wear you down. For Megan, one of those moments kept showing up in the middle of the night. She would be awake, exhausted, trying to change or dress her baby, and something as simple as snaps or zippers would slow everything down. Nothing was technically wrong, and the clothes worked the way they were designed to. But in that moment, when you are running on no sleep, even small friction feels amplified. At first, she handled it the way most people do. She pushed through it and assumed it was just part of the experience. That is what you are expected to do, especially with something that seems minor. Over time, that assumption started to shift. The same frustration kept coming back, and it became harder to ignore. The turning point was not dramatic, but it was clear. She realized this was happening repeatedly, and no one seemed to question it. What was happening at the time went beyond clothing. It reflected a phase of life where everything feels new, overwhelming, and often underexplained. You are learning in real time, adjusting constantly, and trying to figure out what actually works. Instead of accepting that this was just how things were, she started asking whether it had to be that way. That question led her to build Mama Coco, a fastener-free babywear company designed to remove those exact points of friction. What sounded simple quickly became more complex as she moved into product design, sourcing, and securing patent protection for something that needed to function differently from what had already existed. The outcome was not immediate or linear. There were challenges at every stage, from turning an idea into a workable product to navigating production and protecting the concept. At the same time, she was still in the middle of motherhood, which shaped how she approached every decision. The product was not built from hindsight or distance, but from within experience itself. What she learned and continues to learn is that small problems are often overlooked because they are easy to normalize. When something happens repeatedly, people tend to accept it rather than question it, even when it could be improved. These moments shape how people move through their day and whether something feels manageable or harder than it needs to be. Her perspective changed once she recognized that those small, repeated frustrations were worth paying attention to. Not every frustration needs to become a business, but some of them point to something that has been overlooked for too long. Her story is not about a single breakthrough or a perfectly timed idea. It is about introducing something most people accept and choosing not to. If you would like to learn more about Megan and Mama Coco, you can explore her press kit here. And she's got the link, which we will share in the podcast, the link to Mama Coco press deck. So, man, I tell you, when I read through all the stories, this one spoke to me because it was near and dear to my heart. My wife Susan and I, our daughter Michaela just turned 11. We were older parents when we had her, and man, it was hard for Susan becoming a mom, and you kind of feel like you take on all that burden of the childcare, the midnight feedings, all the things that go along with that. And to this day, Susan just has a huge appreciation for how hard it is when you're that first time mom. And I know I became a grandfather. So other piece of a little bit of news, Garrison Peter Athens was born in November, and my daughter-in-law, all of a sudden she's a first time mom. And I know, her name, ironically, Michaela as well. She and Susan had a nice connection there because Susan was able to empathize with how challenging and how just tired and exhausted you are as a mom. So for Megan to have the wherewithal to go through that and create a business opportunity, it was just amazing. So anyway, Megan, thank you for sharing your story. Stephanie, Marvin would love your insights and reflection as well.
Stephanie, if you let me jump in first, you know, I'm a business guy. So when she started talking about business, it really intrigued me because that's how businesses get started. We're solving problems. That's what businesses are. If you think about almost every product or service that we have, it's solving a problem. It was taking too long for me to get from this part of the country to that part of the country. So we got trains, planes, and automobiles. And so all of the different businesses that we come up with, whether it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or today, we're solving a problem. And so Megan was in the middle of it and she was trying to figure it out. And so many of us do the same thing. We launch businesses based on our situation of what we're going through. And I think that's awesome how she said, okay, there has to be some answers to this. And so I jumped to the business part of it. I was hearing what she was saying, and I was, believe me, kids are something else and running on no sleep, and the kids not sleeping, and I still have to go to work and all the other things that they're doing. And kids' schedule don't mesh with business schedules. And I got that side of it, but the side of it that I really resonated with were how we start businesses out of situations that we are going through,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the part that I got. And Megan, thank you. From an entrepreneurial perspective, it was great. I loved it. So Stephanie, which
Yeah, I like that, Marvin. I too kind of picked up on that. But what stuck out with me was that small things become normalized. That sat with me for a second. I had to think about that, listening to that. The small things become normalized because so many times, you can think of so many things that you do daily that, man, if I just had this, if this just worked this way, it would be fine. But then you tend to become just deal with it. And, as I'm not a mom, but I have lots of friends who are moms, my family, all sorts of things. But I can only imagine being a new mom, having a baby and thinking about, man, something could make my life easier, in the things that, I'm doing or whatever I'm coming across, but just deal with it. You just got to deal with, getting through the early years and the early months of having a baby. And so just thinking about, things being normalized, but that Megan took it a step further. to your point, she decided to create a solution. And it was a solution that was for her. But wow, how many lives has she changed, right? Just by starting her business. And it's not only in making things simpler or having things that were comfortable for her baby and those sorts of things, but all these other moms, all these other families, so I love that story. And Megan, I'm excited about your business. I went out and checked you out online. If you guys haven't, please see the link in the chat and make sure you go visit Mama Coco.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You
Stephanie,
know,
go ahead, Pete.
I was just going to say, I think it kind of begs to just even more discussion. Like the interesting point about, like you touched on, Stephanie, that Megan brought up, when things become normalized, and what is that point of where you power through it versus like, hey, I need to somehow change the process, and I think it just begs a huge I don't want to say discussion, but just kind of thought provoking ideas as far as how do we handle that in our own lives? Because we all kind of come to that inflection point where something's got to give, and I just can no longer power through it. And what do I do differently? And with new moms, when you're running on no sleep, that's the biggest thing that just kind of sends you over the edge. And I think there's another lesson learned for all of us as far as how we balance what becomes normalized, what we power through, and when do it kind of challenge us to go to a growth curve, like, okay, I got to do something differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. There's two. It's a mindset, and it's how uncomfortable are we with the situation? That's the biggest thing. And then it's how we think and how we process information. Because there's some people who are immediately creating a strategy, and it's their mindset. They're immediately creating a strategy to fix it. And there's other people who are just kind of frozen in place and seeing how can I normalize this and how can I just deal with this uncomfortable situation longer and longer. But other people, like Megan, she was uncomfortable when she normalized, but there's a point in there where she said, let me build a strategy. Let me start a business. Let me try to figure out how to fix this. So there's two mindsets, and it can get really in depth on how we think. Because some people pretty quickly start figuring out, okay, this is not good. I got to change this. And there's other people saying, well, I got to be here. Let me just make the best of it. And they're the ones who are more normalizing it and are okay with normalizing it because they don't believe it can change. So I think it's the mindset of the people who are engaged in that situation. And Megan was one of the ones who said, hey, let me see how I can change this. And that's how she dealt with it. So I think that's excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. It is a mindset, but I think oftentimes when we go through things or we're dealing with things in whatever situation that we're in, we oftentimes think we're alone in it. We're the
Yeah.
only ones that are going through this particular thing. Well, everyone else has been doing this for 50 years because it's just the way it's always done. And so we don't tend to talk about it. So I
Mhm.
would say, and I would encourage people to just if you're dealing with something or if you have an idea, talk to other people. Because 9 times out of 10, they're dealing with a similar situation or have been through that, right? I mean, we have pencil holders. We have pencil holders because someone was like, there's pencils everywhere. We just need, it's called a cup.
Right.
It started out as a cup. You know what I mean? And so, but other people probably say, oh, wow, you have, pencils all set. That's perfect. And so if you share and you talk about it, it oftentimes you can solve so many problems and challenges that way. And even though everyone is not an executor, I think the mindset of what you're saying, Marvin, strategy, there's some people who are executors. There are some people who kind of can follow behind the execution and the vision and kind of sell, right, Pete? And then there's people who are just kind of waiting for the solution and they're going to jump on it. So you have different levels and layers of people, who can help to solve problems in different kinds of ways. But I would encourage anyone listening, if you're in a situation and you're thinking, man, if we just had this, or if we could just do that, don't normalize it, talk about it, because it's probably something that other people are thinking about, and you just may be the person that can actually execute it.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say.
Thank you. And Megan, thank you for writing that and sending it in. All right, Stephanie, do you have our next story?
I sure do. And let's see, I'm not going to look down here. I want to try to make sure that I'm looking right at you guys when I'm telling this story. So, our next story comes from Aaron P. Aaron is out of Newport, Rhode Island. And Aaron's story is, well, I'll figure it out when I'll figure it out became the game plan. So, let's jump right in here. Aaron said, there's a moment most people don't talk about when you're in the middle of building something and realize there isn't a clear next step. Not because you missed it, but because it was never really there to begin with. That was the space Erin found herself in early on. Working in the world of private yacht charters, she stepped into, I'm sorry, y'all. She stepped into a world, in an industry that looks seamless from the outside, but it's far more complex once you actually get on the inside. There were moving parts everywhere, from global logistics, client expectations, supplier relationships, and a lot of decisions that didn't come from clear instructions. At the time, the instinct was simple: learn as much as possible, stay close to the work, and keep things moving. There was no perfect system to follow. So progress came from paying attention, asking the right questions, and slowly understanding how everything connected. The turning point didn't come from a single moment. It showed up in smaller realizations that started to repeat themselves. Clients were often unsure about what they were getting into. Travel advisors wanted to offer yacht charters, but felt like they didn't have enough visibility or support. Even people who were interested in this kind of travel sometimes held back, not because it wasn't for them, but because it just felt unclear. That pattern became hard to ignore. The decision that followed was not about changing the entire industry, it was about changing how things were approached within it. Instead of leaning into complexity, Aaron chose to focus on clarity. Instead of relying on assumptions, the focus shifted to making information easier to access, easier to understand, and easier to act on. That mindset became part of how Sanderson Yachting operates today. The goal is not just to book trips, but to help people feel confident in the decisions they are making, whether they are travelers planning on an experience or advisors supporting their clients. Like most shifts, it didn't immediately make things easier. Choosing clarity often means taking more time to explain, to guide, and to stay involved in the details. It requires patience, especially in an environment where speed can sometimes feel more important. But over time, the impact became clear. Conversations changed. Clients asked better questions. Advisors felt more comfortable offering something that once felt out of reach. What initially felt like extra effort started to create stronger relationships and more consistent results. Looking back, the lesson wasn't about finding the perfect strategy. It was about recognizing what people actually need and being willing to build around that, even if it takes longer or looks different from what others are doing. That approach continues to shape how Aaron works today. There is still no perfect roadmap. The industry is still evolving, and every client brings a different perspective. But the foundation remains the same. Stay close to the experience, keep things clear, and make decisions that support both trust and long-term relationships. The lesson that comes through is simple. Sometimes progress doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from paying attention, making thoughtful decisions, and building something people can understand and rely on. Wow. Wow. And what a great piggyback story.
It's perfect.
What a well, I'll let you jump into that, Marvin, and then I'll tell my thoughts.
Okay, it fits perfect because it's about execution. It's about doing something, seeing a problem, seeing a situation, and doing something about it instead of saying same old. We're going to keep doing the same old thing, same results. Aaron says, "Hey, let's do something different. Let's look at it differently. Look at it from a different perspective." And sometimes in organizations, we need just a different perspective. And sometimes that perspective seems crazy. It's like, why would we do that? Because what we're doing is not working. What we're doing is not clear. And then you need people with an open mind, though. That's one thing. If you have a closed mind to new things, it's not going to work. So it's a great continuation story from Megan, our first story. And so I think it's good that we understand, and Aaron did this, what's going on in our industry and how can we change to make it better
Mm-hmm.
and actually making some action steps moving forward. That's my input. I thought it was awesome.
Yes. How about you, Pete? You look like you're ready to say something.
No, I'm going to reach out to Erin and have her be part of Athens School of Selling. I mean, she just totally crushed it. I love so many things about that story where, we sometimes get caught up in the uncertainty. It's not clear. And she really focused on, hey, I want clarity. And that is so key when we're working with customers. Are we easy to do business with? I want you to be completely confident and comfortable in your decisions. And you can sense that that's oozing out of her pores as she's telling that story. And that's the magic elixir that, really came out where, she was taking the time to make sure that the customers were making good choices, that their needs were being met. And she set the stage up for, long-term customer relationships. And, she's got, repeat customers coming back, referrals coming, going forward. So a tip of the cap and a toast to Aaron for really doing a tremendous sales job there.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. What I heard in the story too was about pausing. It was about pausing. It was about listening and recognizing that what you're doing just doesn't work. And a lot of times people just tend to do things again because that's how it's always been done. To piggyback on the story, there's a story about a grandmother, a mother, and a younger daughter, and they cooked ham. Every year, the grandmother cut off the butt of the ham. The mother cut off the butt of the ham. The daughter said, "Why do we cut off the butt of the ham?" Mother said, "Because grandma always did it." Grandma says, "Well, my grandma always did it." And then she finds out, well, they always did it because the pan was too small, right?
I love
So
that
one thing
story.
is, if you don't ask questions, you don't know.
Right.
If you don't recognize the things that are going on in your business and take a pause and get clarity and just re-strategize behind that, then you're always going to do things the way you've always done them, and therefore normalizing those things. So I love that it was a good piggyback story. Didn't realize it to even what Megan, went through in terms of how she decided she saw a challenge and she solved it. Whereas Aaron saw that, they had a model, right? But then saying, we're not really getting connected. We're not able to create the right experience for a customer or even for a planner, someone who brings the customers to the table. So I love that you took the pause and you sat in the pause for a minute, Aaron, and that sounds like it has really helped your business be successful. And I'm really curious about how to plan some sort of a trip on your yacht through your yacht company.
And we know in sales we need clarity.
Yes.
And if the customer's not clear, it makes it hard to sell consistently, getting repeat sales, getting new customers if it's not clear. And so dead spot on. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Love it, love it, love it. Any
Yeah.
other final comments about Aaron? Aaron, and thank you. Thank you so much for sending this in. This is absolutely wonderful. And these are the stories that we want. These are the stories that people need to hear about and motivate, encourage, inspire people to move and to execute and to reach out and feel a little bit uncomfortable about some things. So, closing statements about both stories. Throw it up. Whoever wants to jump in, Any closing feelings about any of their stories?
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, again, thank you guys for even just sharing your stories because it's not always easy to do that. And I personally have learned some lessons from those. But what I do want to do is encourage other people. These are business owners. And so they're telling their story from business owner perspective and kind of how they shifted or got started in business. We want to encourage you guys also, it's real stories, real people, real lessons. Any story, whether you from a child growing up, something that may have happened in your life that shifted and created a life lesson. Definitely want to hear from you all, but do want to thank Aaron and Megan for submitting your stories and the encouragement and the lessons that you shared.
Right. Pete.
Yeah, jump on the bandwagon. Exactly that. Your stories are so inspiring, and taking the time to share your struggles, your trials, your tribulations, how you handled those, how you overcame adversity, just paves the way and pays it forward for someone else to learn from that. So please send in your stories, and we can't wait to learn from you. So thank you.
Yes, stories really help people. They inspire people. They encourage people to move their lives to the next level. So they're very important. I've talked with several people, and I want to submit my story, but I don't know how to. I don't know how to do it. It is sometimes as simple as you have a recording function on your phone or a recording function, and you just start talking. And everyone has a story, everyone has a voice. And that's why we are here on this platform so we can tell your story. So record it, it'll print out, and we'll get a chance to share and motivate it with others. So we thank both Megan and Aaron for the stories and the courage to
Yes.
send them in. So thank you so much, Stephanie, Pete. Until next time, thank you both.
We'll see you soon.